Luca stood up from his bed and sighed, stretching as he did so. He looked around his room, seeing all the boxes and suitcases that still needed unpacking. He groaned, running a hand through his messy hair. Luca wasn't exactly the most organized person, so the thought of having to unpack everything was not something he was looking forward to. He reluctantly walked over to one of the boxes and began opening it, pulling out clothes and other belongings. Luca glanced down at his digital watch, his eyes widening as he realized the time. It was already 6:30, and he still had so much to unpack. He muttered a curse under his breath and set down the clothes he was holding, rubbing his temples in frustration. "Great, now I have to order food too?" he grumbled to himself. Luca pulled out his phone and opened a food ordering app. "Pizza it is," he muttered, scrolling through the options. "Better get a large one just in case my roommate shows up," he thought. Luca wanted to ensure there was enough food for the both of them, just in case. He decided to go with a classic pepperoni and cheese, figuring it was a safe bet that his roommate would enjoy it. With a few taps on his phone, Luca placed the order and set his phone down on the bed. As he waited for the food to arrive, Luca went back to unpacking his things, grumbling about how much of a chore the whole thing was. Let's put this here. These books on the shelf, he mumbled, sorting through his belongings and trying to find the perfect place for each item. He was trying his best to keep everything neat and organized, but it was proving to be more difficult than he had anticipated. Luca let out a frustrated huff and ran a hand through his messy hair again. Luca let out a defeated sigh and glanced around at the half-unpacked boxes and mess in his room. "Screw it. I'll finish this tomorrow," he mumbled to himself, flopping down onto his bed and grabbing his phone. With a tired huff, he opened TikTok and began mindlessly scrolling through the endless feed of videos.
You stand in the presence of Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, rightful heir to the Iron Throne.
After a while, he glanced up at the clock on the wall, realizing how much time had passed. "Man, I'm starving," he grumbled, his stomach growling in agreement. Luca's ears perked up at the sound of someone knocking at the door. He quickly sat up straight, his stomach growling louder at the thought of food. Finally, the damn pizza's here. Luca rummaged through his pocket, his fingers searching for some cash. He eventually found a crumpled $20 bill and held it tightly in his hand. He approached the door, his mouth watering at the thought of the pizza that was waiting for him on the other side. "Hey there, I'll take that." He abruptly stopped in the middle of his sentence as he saw you standing there, his eyes widening in surprise. "Pizza," he finished weakly. Luca blinked, his cocky demeanor giving way to slight confusion. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "Wait, you're my roommate?" He couldn't help but be taken aback by how small you looked in comparison to him. Luca glanced down the hallway, spotting the pizza guy standing there with the pizza boxes in his hands. He let out a soft "oh" as he realized his mistake. He rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly, feeling a little foolish for having jumped to conclusions. "Yeah, that's my guy. Sorry about that," he muttered, a hint of embarrassment in his voice. Luca gave you a nod, stepping aside and holding the door open for you. "Go on in," he said briskly, gesturing into the room. He then quickly turned towards the pizza guy. handing over the crumpled $20 bill and taking the pizza boxes. "Sorry about that, man," he muttered, shooting the guy an apologetic smile. Luca walked into the room, carefully balancing the pizza boxes in his arms. He kicked the door shut behind him, then turned to face you. "I'm Luca, by the way," he said, holding out a hand towards you. "Guess we're roommates now, huh?" Luca felt your soft hand in his, and a jolt of surprise went through him. Your skin was much softer than he expected, and he couldn't help but notice how small your hand felt in his large one. He held onto your hand a moment longer, his calloused fingers lightly tracing the smooth skin on the back of your hand. Luca chuckled softly and nodded, his eyes roaming over the half-unpacked boxes and scattered items in the room. "Yeah, I've gotten some stuff done, but I still have a lot to go," he replied, scratching the back of his neck sheepishly. He shrugged nonchalantly at your apology, waving it off. "Nah, don't worry about it. Better late than never, right?" Luca glanced around the room, noticing the absence of any other boxes or bags. He tilted his head at you, a puzzled expression on his face. "Hey, where are all your boxes?" he asked, his curiosity piqued. "Did you bring anything with you at all?" "In your car? Why didn't you bring them in with you?" Luca glanced down at his watch, his eyes widening as he saw how late it had gotten. "Oh crap," he muttered, his mouth falling open in surprise. "It's that late already?" he exclaimed, running a hand through his already messy hair. "No wonder I'm starving." Luca rubbed his eyes tiredly, sighing as he realized the time. He looked over at you, his expression softening slightly. "You know what? It's too late to bother with that now. Just leave it for tomorrow," he said, giving a small smile. "I'll help you bring everything in the morning. No point in you struggling with all that by yourself." Luca returned your smile, the corner of his lips quirking up faintly. "No problem," he said, shrugging casually. "It's what roommates are for, right? Helping each other out and all that." "Why don't we sit down and eat this pizza together?" he suggested. He carried the boxes over towards the couch, setting them down on the coffee table and taking a seat. He looked over at you, waiting to see if you would join him. Luca raised an eyebrow, noticing the hesitance in your voice. He didn't want to push you, but he was curious about why you seemed so reluctant. "Are you sure?" he asked, tilting his head. "I promise I won't bite, you know." He gave you a lopsided grin, trying to lighten the mood a little. Luca stood up from the couch, striding over to the fridge with an easy grace. He opened it and grabbed 2 cans of soda, glancing back at you. "Come on, you really gonna make me eat all this pizza by myself?" he teased, holding up the sodas. "Just sit down and join me. It's not gonna kill you, I promise." Luca approached you with a smile, holding out one of the sodas towards you. He towered over you, his tall frame casting a slight shadow over you. "I'm in charge, and part of being in charge is making sure my roommate doesn't go hungry. So sit down and eat." Luca chuckled to himself as you sat down next to him. He opened the pizza box with a smile, the scent of cheese and pepperoni filling the air. "Looks like we're gonna have to share and eat from the box," he muttered, grabbing a slice and taking a large bite. No clean plates or anything yet, but hey, this is part of the college experience, right? Eating pizza off the box like savages. Luca watched as you hesitantly picked up a slice, a smirk playing at the edge of his lips. He was amused by how cautious you were being. "Relax, it's just pizza," he said, nudging you lightly with his elbow. "You don't have to treat it like it's gonna bite you or something. Enjoy it." Luca watched as you took a cautious bite out of the pizza, his smirk growing wider. He chuckled softly, shaking his head in amusement. "See? Not so bad, right?" he said, taking another large bite out of his own slice. "You gotta loosen up a little, you know? We're in college. We're supposed to be enjoying ourselves." Luca leaned back against the couch as well, his long limbs stretching out lazily. He took another bite of the pizza, contemplating your question for a moment. "Geez, where do I even start?" he murmured, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "Well, let's see." He thought for a moment, then shrugged. "I guess the basics first. I'm 19 years old, I'm a freshman, and I'm studying business." "What about you?" he asked, tilting his head slightly. "What's your story? What are you studying, and all that?" Luca raised an eyebrow, genuinely surprised. "Accounting, huh?" he said, a hint of impressed in his voice. "That's pretty cool. I suck at numbers, so kudos to you for being able to handle all that." Luca chuckled slyly, his expression turning slightly smug. "Yes, well," he drawled, a teasing glint in his eyes. "As a future business owner who can't do math, that's where having a personal accountant comes in handy, doesn't it? Someone to handle all the numbers for me." He leaned back on the couch, a cocky smirk playing on his lips. "And who better to be my personal accountant than my cute little roommate?" Luca let out a surprised chuckle at your response, raising an eyebrow in mock offense. "Excuse me, did you just call me little?" he said, feigning outrage. "I'll have you know, I'm 6'7", little one. I could pick you up with one hand." Luca rolled his eyes at your comment, taking a long sip of his soda. "Oh, really?" he said, arching an eyebrow in challenge. "Just because you're 5 whole months older than me? You think you're automatically in charge? That's cute." He set down the soda can on the coffee table, a smug smirk playing on his lips. "But let's get something straight here. I'm bigger, stronger, and smarter. I call the shots, little one." Luca chuckled, lazily gesturing around the room. "See that shelf over there?" he said, pointing towards a bookshelf in the corner. "That's mine. And oh, that side of the couch is mine too." He looked around, continuing to claim various pieces of furniture and areas as his own. "Oh, and that gaming console is also mine. You're welcome to use it, but it's still mine. The kitchen counter there? That's also mine. And oh, the bathroom." Luca chuckled, seeing the look on your face. He raised his hands in mock surrender. Okay. I was just kidding," he said, unable to contain his laughter. "I don't actually call dibs on every single thing in the apartment. We do share this space, you know." Luca smirked as he pointed towards his bed, the one that was neatly made up with sheets and blankets. "But," he said, a hint of possessiveness in his voice, "that bed, that's mine." He then pointed towards your bed, which was still unmade and lacking any bedding. "Looks like you need to make yours, though." Luca's gaze shifted to the window, hearing the sound of raindrops tapping against the glass. Luca looked at you, his expression softened a bit as he saw your uncertain face. He sighed, his stubborn attitude softening slightly. "Listen, I can lend you some sheets and a blanket, okay? And some extra pillows, too." Luca nodded, reluctantly agreeing. Yeah, I will," he said, his voice slightly gruff. "It's not a big deal. I have extra bedding, so you might as well have it. As he leaned back on the couch, he couldn't help but yawn loudly. The sound of the rain outside, combined with the cozy atmosphere, was making him drowsy. He glanced over at you, noticing that you had finished your pizza too. "Man, I'm beat," he muttered sleepily, blinking his tired eyes. Luca finished the last sip of his soda and stood up from the couch, stretching briefly as he did so. He walked over to the kitchen sink, washing his hands quickly. He then made his way over to your unmade bed, a slightly exasperated expression on his face. "All right, come on, let's get this bed of yours ready," he said, rolling his sleeves up. Luca shot you a look, crossing his arms. "Oh, hell no," he said, shaking his head stubbornly. "I'm not gonna let you make your bed alone. We share this space, remember? I'm helping." Luca hurriedly began making the bed, his actions quick and efficient. Despite his tired state, he seemed determined to get the job done. But with every few minutes, he couldn't help but yawn, the sleepiness washing over him. "Jesus Christ, I'm exhausted," he muttered under his breath, tugging the blankets into place. "Almost done, almost done." Luca finished making the bed with a final tug on the blanket, stepping back to survey his handiwork. The bed was now neatly made, the sheets smooth and the pillows fluffed. It looked perfectly comfortable. He let out another long yawn, the drowsiness hitting him like a ton of bricks. "There we go, done," he said, his words slightly slurred. Luca let out a tired groan as he dropped onto the bed, not realizing in his half-asleep state that it wasn't his own. He let his body sink into the softness of the bedding, the exhaustion washing over him. "Comfy," he muttered, his eyes already starting to flutter shut. Luca's body relaxed completely, his limbs feeling heavy with sleep. His breathing slowed, evening out into soft, deep breaths as he surrendered to slumber. It only took a few seconds for him to completely knock out, a peaceful expression on his face. Luca's body relaxed completely, his limbs feeling heavy with sleep. His breathing slowed, evening out into soft, deep breaths as he surrendered to slumber. It only took a few seconds for him to completely knock out, a peaceful expression on his face. You found yourself staring at Luca, who was now fast asleep on your bed. You couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions as you observed his peaceful expression. He looked so carefree and untroubled, his long limbs splayed out haphazardly across the sheets. You debated with yourself, contemplating whether or not to disturb him. But ultimately, you couldn't bring yourself to wake him. You didn't want to ruin his sleep. Outside, the rain continued to fall heavily, the sound of raindrops pattering against the window the only source of sound in the room. You flicked off the lights, leaving the room in semi-darkness. You took one final glance towards your now occupied bed, watching Luca's sleeping form for a moment. Then, slowly, you made your way over to his bed, crawling underneath the sheets and settling in the comfortable bedding. As you snuggled beneath the sheets of his bed, a familiar scent wafted towards your nostrils. It was a musky, masculine scent, mixed with the faint notes of his cologne and deodorant. It was the scent of Luca, and it seemed to envelop you completely as you lay there. The smell of him was oddly comforting. Slowly, the steady rhythm of the rain outside and the warmth under the sheets began to lull you into a state of relaxation. The sounds of Luca's soft breathing from the room over added a sense of comfort and security. With a yawn, you felt your eyelids growing heavy, your body sinking further into the soft mattress. In a matter of minutes, you, too, succumbed to sleep, drifting off into a peaceful slumber.